welcome back our guests tonight, John Massari, Brett Kramer, Mike Martinez, Karen Blake. Welcome back. I'm sorry, I only have one mic to share. This is gonna be a little awkward tonight. We'll make this a little bit quick. So, show our guests some love, Sacramento. All right. I got a few questions of my own, but then do some of you have questions tonight? Maybe just a couple. We'll get a couple from the crowd. We'll get a few of those in a minute. Okay, here's my burning question about the end of the movie. Grant, I'm gonna start with you. And I think we all kind of want to know about this. Like, the girl, Debbie, that you're making out with in the beginning of the movie, she kind of ends up with Dave at the end, but you seem really supportive of that. Is there a poly thing going on?
Okay, that's just me being conciliatory. Like, he didn't die, so we're glad Dave's there, but no.
Okay. So just to be clear, there's no polyamorous or any, it's all right. It's still. Only in your fanfic online. All right.
She would not leave Mike Tobacco for Dudley Do Right.
All right. See, do you ever read fanfic online on this? Okay, it's probably a good idea. All right. Let me ask this though. No, in all seriousness. So obviously, this movie, was made in the late '80s. It's been out for a long time. Look at this crowd coming out to see the film. Still loving the movie all these years later.
Rock, thank you for coming, really.
You want the lights on the audience? Okay, can we get the ugly lights? John wants his photo of all you. All right, can we get...
No one believes, raise the light.
All right. You've all been warned. They're coming on. Get that makeup back on.
John, get an infrared phone in.
Who here has seen killer clowns from outer space just a moment ago? After I mixed the music for this movie and I delivered the tapes back to the studio, I was in the elevator with the members of the legal department and as well as the accounting department. They asked me, "What's that?" I go, "Oh, it's one of your new products, Killer Clowns from Outer Space." They just throw that in the dumpster. That movie's going nowhere. Nobody's gonna like that movie. And I told them, "You know what? It's not for you." So thank you from all of us.
So the true story, there's actually kind of an interesting story behind it, is that the company that made the movie, Transworld, they went bankrupt shortly afterwards, but they actually made the movie to lose money. They basically, it was one of those things like the movie The Producers or whatever like that you make something and you basically are going to charge, you're going to make the movie for $3 million, you're going to write off like $8 million against it, so you don't really want the movie to be successful. So they found these crazy guys called the Kyoto Brothers, these young kids from, New York, the Bronx, and they had a nutso idea about clowns from outer space, and they thought, perfect, they've never made a movie. They're gonna make this kooky movie about clowns. It's perfect. I mean, if there was ever a movie that is for sure that nobody's gonna like, it is for sure that's gonna lose money, it's this one. Were they right? 35 years later, thank you very much.
Well, all I have to say is thank God you didn't go to streaming in this era, and that we can all see this movie 35 years later. But how does it feel, everyone? Like, is it kind of like a vindication with that story that you described? How does it feel 35 years later to see
I didn't know that. I did not know that until I was told this story from people that actually knew this story, like from people like John from the elevator and from the Kyotos and stuff like that. But we did always, I mean, how can you read a script like this and not think, this, I mean, we definitely thought it had the potential to be something like this, but I think we're all still gobsmacked and shocked that it has, you know, become like as popular, and that it's continued to become popular the way it has. But we always thought it had something unique and crazy and creative enough that it had the potential.
Well, we had precedent, because around that time, just before that, there's Pee-wee's Big Adventure, right? There was Beetlejuice, and so I thought, Killer Clowns from Outer Space makes sense. Why not? And then, like, it was in the theater for 2 days.
By the way, the Kyotos, if you guys saw Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I don't know if you know this, but do you guys know what Large March is?
Yeah.
Well, the Kyotos actually did Large March. So that was one of their.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
And they did Critters before. As a matter of fact, when we were in rehearsals for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, they had just done Critters, and they showed us you know, in their hotel room, they had us all come in and we watched Critters together. It was kind of fun.
I'm gonna make my way down to the audience. Anyone down there have a question? We'll get to a couple of, okay, I'm gonna make my way over there. While I do that, let me ask this, because I mentioned my favorite particular death in the movie is the shadow puppet scene, because it is just so, do you all have a favorite death scene in the movie that you think is just great, that's still satisfying to see all this time?
I like the part where Slim knocked the guy off the cliff of the car, because that's what I did. I like the scenes that I did, which was sucking the blood out of the cocoon, and, shooting a popcorn gun in the elevator. But you know, for me, this is surreal. Like, this is a 35-year-ago thing that I did when I was young, and it's still it's a trip. I feel like I said, I'm in Burning Man. You never know what to expect, what's around the corner. I wouldn't be surprised if there was another one, part 2, or a series, or God knows what, and who knows where these clowns are gonna go. You know, I'm looking forward to whatever comes in the future. I'm so excited to be part of this thing. I'm tickled pink. But yeah, sucking the blood out of the cocoon, I'll never forget, because while I was doing it, I said to myself, what the am I doing? You see the blood, it was corn syrup, and I'm watching, I'm like, this is just too much, man.
Now, before we get to the audience question, Herod, I didn't want to bring it up, but since you brought it up, sequel? Like, is there any possibility anyway? We heard anything? Something
Well, look what's happening. I mean, this is sort of a resurgence. I mean, when they're showing Killer Clowns now, it's actually doing better than Batman and the Batman series. I mean, the theaters are almost full. So I think, and the game is coming out. So the more that people do the game, and the more that people just keep buying the products and supporting the film, they're going to take notice, and then they go, you know what? We got to do a sequel, or we got to do a series, actually.
Speaking of the game, John, I think, is it true you're working on the game? I think I read somewhere. All right, hands are tied. All right, fair enough. All right, let's get to the audience questions. Hi there, what's your name and your question?
My name is Chloe, and I wanted to know if you guys thought that working on a production headed by prop makers was any different than working with more traditional filmmakers.
Well, you mean with the Kyoto brothers? Well, you know, they're not actually, not that they're not capable of making props. I'm sure they've made quite a few, but they're actually, I guess you would call them, you know, really sculptors and stop motion artists. You know, they're incredibly talented. You know, they build entire worlds of like that look like dioramas and shoot. You know, you ever see Team America? They did all the puppets for Team America. you know, filmmakers are filmmakers. Everybody comes at it from a slightly different angle. If you're dealing with people like the Kyotos that grew up in their backyard with a love of monster movies and horror movies and aliens from outer space, then they're going to bring that passion to it and that kind of a vision, what they really wanted. You know, in other words, in this movie, they were huge fans of The Blob you know, basically all the different Ray Harryhausen movies and all, you know, and all the movies that, you know, everything from Godzilla to the, you know, to all of the, you know, the aliens from outer space type of movies, and they're all a little bit over the top. And they were made very serious at the time. You know, you watch Godzilla, like everybody is so hyped up and serious, and so they were really clear about what they wanted. And I think the most important thing, at least for me, because is to be, if I'm directing, then I want to have a very clear vision to give to the actors, and if I'm acting, then I want to be working with the directors and filmmakers that have a very clear vision of what they want. So if you're working with, you know, somebody like Rob Reiner, well, he's got a very different sensibility, but he knows what he wants, right? And if you're working with the Kyotos, they have it. You have to trust that director, and I think we all very much trusted what they wanted to do. They're very talented, and they created something that I think is very unique in terms of its vision, and we just trusted them to follow through. And sometimes they pushed me to be so hyper and over the top almost, and so it felt a little bit odd because I was in acting class trying to be, you know, very real, very Robert De Niro-ish, and it felt a little bit odd, but you know, I think when I see it, I think it works perfect for the movie. So at the end of the day, they knew what they were doing.
All right, I step back here in the audience. Let me, this guy's definitely a fan back here because I see the mask and everything. So what's your name, buddy, and what's your question?
My name's Chris. First of all, I love the movie, love you guys. My question is for Mike Martinez. Are you still doing stunt work, and how is it working on The Matrix?
No, yeah, I was hired on Killer Klowns as a stunt guy. Basically, I was Herod's stunt double, and I played many other clowns doing the stunts, and I also doubled Michael Siegel driving the ice cream. But working on The Matrix was the longest job I ever had. I was one of the driving coordinators for the freeway sequence on Reloaded. And I ended up working, if you saw Reloaded, the freeway chase, we worked on that for about 3 months. And so it was a lot of fun, it was a lot of work. Everything was choreographed like a dance. Every one of we didn't call them crashes, we called them events. And we rehearsed them, each one, for about a week. And then we did it, and a lot of times we did it a couple of times. And that was all with 300 background drivers too to fill the freeway. So it was quite an undertaking, but it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, thanks for the question. We're gonna get just a couple more questions. Don't worry, if I don't get to you and your question, we're gonna have an opportunity here in just a moment for some autographs and selfies and all of that, so you can, you know, ask questions directly. But in the meantime, here, we've got another question. What's your name and your question?
I'm Josh. Hey guys, nice to meet you all. My question is for Grant Kramer, actually. For Grant, at the end of the movie, you, Debbie, and Dave get covered in the pie, so I'm wondering, are all three of you guys dead at the end of the movie? Or is that the end of a sequel or show?
No, by that time we've been able to rub a little bit of antidote cologne on our faces. Well, I'll tell you the story. If you don't know it, that didn't happen when we shot the movie. The clown spaceship blows up, and the scene where I'm hugging Debbie and looking up at the thing blowing up is the end of the movie. And what happened is when they screened the movie, they do these test screenings, and the audience came back and said, you know, we really like, you know, Dave and the Terenzi brothers. We don't want them to die. And because of the nature of the film, that it's, you know, like I said, people call it a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie. The Kyotos call it candy-coated kills because There's nobody really, other than Officer Mooney, there's not really anybody of significance that gets killed. They're mostly comes in smaller characters. So we came back about 3 months later, after we finished shooting the movie. I think it was about that long, and they just said, we're going to shoot a new ending. And to be honest with you, our faces probably should have dissolved. But I think they just thought that was a nice, fun cap to the movie. And, in the pie scene, which is actually my favorite death scene, I actually think the best line of the movie, I just think that guy delivers it so perfectly. What are you going to do with those pies, boys? But and by the way, it's a cool story. That was everybody in the cast and crew lined up behind the camera with 2 pies, 1 in each hand. And when they said action, and he said that line, they would go. And we all threw those pies. But yes, theoretically, we probably should have had our faces melted, but it was really just a great kind of capping comedic moment at the end of the movie. It was a total reshoot in order to satisfy the test screenings and the audiences.
All right, I think we got one more. I'm so sorry, everybody, but I promise you'll all get a chance to come on down in a little bit. So go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Vladimir. I've had a burning question for about 35 years after I first saw this movie. I was in high school when it was filmed in Watsonville, right? Watsonville, Santa Cruz area. Okay, so here's my question. My friend and I here, Abe, we think that Killer Klowns from Outer Space is an actual event that occurred in the 80s. And could you tell us if this story is based on a true story?
Yes.
All I can say is,
Do you want it to be based on a true story, sir? Well, on that note, before we move into everybody being able to come down and get their autographs and all that good stuff, and then of course our dance party coming up later. Obviously we see people have their own stories, their own feelings, and they want to see this universe keep going. So, what's the best way for us fans to show people we want more Killer Klowns? What's the best thing we can do as fans?
well, I mean, truthfully, probably the best. I mean, everything you're doing is great. I mean, show up and support things, but one way is, of course, you can always send, find whoever's address over at MGM or Amazon, whoever's in charge of the movie, and send in whatever mail you can and say, where's the fan mail, or go online.
Probably people are this crowd is a little too young to remember the phrase, send your cards and
No, I don't even know if people do that anymore. I mean, everything is probably done digitally these days.
To be very honest, for years I worked in the ad business, working for pretty high-end commercials. When someone goes to the trouble to write a letter, put a stamp on it, send it, that represents a lot of people. So that's one way to do it, and be genuine. Don't say that I said.
Yeah, now listen, years ago I was on a soap opera called The Young and the Restless, and sometimes when they were getting ready to, thinking about writing off a character, and if that person had a lot of fan mail or something like that, they would rethink that. So
the TV Times, people would write to the TV Times and complain.
Exactly.
Right.
So
that was the before Instagram.
Exactly, but also, listen, truthfully, there's been a conception among the studios and the executives and everything at the studios, because most of these people are very, I guess you would call them suits. They're not. Killer Klowns is maybe a little bit too much of a interesting and unique and offbeat taste for them. They like a kind of a straight horror hatchet, going into a head. So I think they've thought for a long time that maybe Killer Klowns is a little bit too fringe or a little bit too niche. But all of the fan support of Hollywood Horror Nights at the Universal Studios and the screenings like this and all of the merchandising that goes flying off the shelves at Spirit of Halloween and the other places, that has all made an impact, which led them to make the video game now. And we really feel strongly that because the video game is a beautiful game, I don't know if you've seen any of the previews and stuff for it, but I think it's going to be very, very good. And if that really flies off the shelves and does well, then I think that is absolute proof to them that this has a mainstream audience and that it's worth doing the sequel to, which I just think they've had trouble comprehending. So all the things you're already doing, you know, and I hate to say, you know, spend money on Killer Klowns things, but, you know, money talks, so.
Well, if you stay for my dance party show, you're going to see some really imagery that you probably haven't seen before, mixed in with familiar things. But there's some scenes from the video that so that's it.
All right, well, on that note, we want to get to that soon. But first, we're going to allow an opportunity for autographs and selfies and all that. So, Sacramento, help me thank our guests tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and let our celebrities head on down to their tables. And the way this is going to work, so for about the next, we want to make sure everybody gets a shot. So